Hi, everyone. My name is Carlene Hancock. I'm the one that likes to ride motorcycles, if you got to see any of the slide deck. Uh, anyway, let's see. Foreign vendor training. This is primarily for those who deal with foreign vendors or have dealt or will deal with foreign vendors because of your agency's needs for goods and services and who they contract with. The other thing is this is a training that is designed to be built upon the vendor training that Tammy Lyons presented earlier in the year. So I'm hoping that if you haven't taken the training for hers, you've at least been able to take time or a minute and go over those slides. It explains so much of foreign vendors or so much of vendors in and of themselves. And a lot of it I'm not going to be covering. I'm just going to be covering aspects of foreign vendors. Hope that made sense. Today, I'm planning on doing a brief overview of what is a foreign vendor. We're going to talk about what forms are needed to set up a foreign vendor, i.e. the W-8s and the different forms that they have. Entry into R-stars, how to request activation, what form to use, there are questions involved on this form I need answered. I'm going to talk about foreign vendors and IRS reporting that SFMS does. Illustration of the differences between foreign vendors and U.S. vendors because there are differences. And then we're going to talk about some miscellaneous information, payment method available for the vendors and timelines. And then we're going to do some questions and wrap up. If you have a question for this training only, if you've done other trainings with me, you know that I like to do questions on the question screens. But on foreign vendors, because realistically it's about an hour training, but we allow some additional time for questions. If you want to pop up with those questions when they pop into your head, please type them into the comments and Amber's going to help me by bringing them to my attention, and I will answer them as they come up. But this is the only training that I will do that on. Any other training that I give, like 1099s or D23s, I ask you to wait. So if you would be so kind. But I'd like it a little bit more informal. Anyway, let's talk about what is a foreign vendor. Basically, the quick definition of a foreign vendor is an individual, business, or a government entity that are formed or reside outside of the United States of America. So we have domestic vendors. Tammy covers this. They're 1s and 3s. Foreign vendors are 2, and these guys are outside of the U.S. Foreign vendors also can be found working within the U.S. and doing business within the U.S. We have had examples of this in the past of students on a specific visa that are allowed to work. Businesses that maintain U.S. offices, or individuals that have a U.S. address but are still considered foreign vendors because although they might be here for work, they still go home. We've also had in the past, accidentally, we've had emergency needs for interpreting services for interpreting needs that weren't with it. They were here on a visiting visa that they accidentally used them. You got to be really careful because if the government finds out we've used them that way, they could lose entry rights back into the United States. So, and right now that is a sensitive subject. So basically, we're going to ask you to determine if this is a foreign vendor prior to entry into R-stars. You're going to go out on the web and you're going to say, if this is a business, where are the corporate headquarters? Where are they incorporated? Are they incorporated within the U.S.? That's where they reside. That's where they've been incorporated, or are their headquarters in Canada, Iceland, England, Australia, New Zealand, Germany? Those are some examples of headquarters outside the U.S. If an individual, uh, where's their primary country of residence? Are they Canadian, Australian, New Zealand? You get the idea. If an individual is in the USA on a student visa, the question is, what country will they return to when their program is over? We also have vendors that are outside of the 50 states that are considered U.S. entities. So these are not foreign vendors. U.S. Virgin Island, Puerto Rico, U.S. Samoa, Guam, and there are also U.S. companies that have a global presence. So a Hilton in China is not a is a U.S. company. It is not a Chinese company. Their corporate headquarters, U.S. Hilton is incorporated in the U.S. Nike has a presence in Asia, but the headquarters itself is Beaverton, Oregon. So these are global countries with a U.S. presence versus being a foreign vendor with a U.S. presence. I hope that kind of makes sense. There are IRS documentation that you're going to need to have in hand before you enter them into RSTARS. W-9s, all of us are familiar with if we've been working on AP for any length of times. Those are associated with U.S. companies, U.S. entities, U.S. individuals that are acting and being paid by the state of Oregon or anybody else in the U.S. Foreign vendors, however, have 5 different forms that can be completed. And you need to be very specific because each form is designed for that singular purpose. So a W-8 BEN is for individuals only. If you're paying someone to come in and speak at a conference for you, an individual, or it's a sole proprietor, or you're paying a name like John Doe, Kathy Smith, these are is a W-8 BEN. And they ask very specific questions such as date of birth, foreign identification issues, all kinds of things, but it's a singular form, very easy to fill out. W-8-BENE is probably for businesses and not nonprofits, not-for-profits, is probably the most difficult form. You get it, it's a very, very intimidating form when you first look at it, but it covers a wide range of questions and concerns dealing with businesses. It's probably the #1 form that we receive, but don't assume that that is going to cover everybody because Kathy Smith, John Doe should not fill out a WBENE. W-8 ECI is for those foreign vendor companies that have determined that they're headquartered outside the USA, but they have a presence in the USA. They have office facilities in the USA. So that's an ECI, which is effectively connected. I don't know what the I stands for, but effectively connected, basically business entity, but that would be an E. Anyway, those guys have a presence in the US. You also might get a W-9 from them. Don't be surprised. It's acceptable if it accompanies the ECI. The W-8 IMY, I don't believe I've ever seen, but that is for a foreign vendor or intermediary and foreign flow through. I don't believe the state of Oregon, sorry, has any of these, but it is out there. And then the EXP is used for foreign governments and universities. So if University of Saskatchewan, Government of Canada, uh, it's those kinds of government, foreign government and universities. And these are all found on the irs.gov website. I also maintain in my arsenal, I maintain uh, current copies and instructions for these. So if you ever have to send any of these out and you don't have it, you can always contact me and I can send these to you. They are fillable forms and easily sent out. The last thing you do before adding a foreign vendor to RStars. So you've determined their foreign vendor, you've researched that, you determined that you have the right W-8 in your hot little hand signed by the vendor. You need to go to the 3A screen and do a name search to verify that there are no duplicate vendors present. So nobody with that name or any of that coding. Once a vendor has been confirmed that it's not present on the 3A, it's okay to add. And all new vendors are added via the 52 screen or profile. And note, when entering addresses, try to abbreviate streets to ST, roads to RD, highway, HWY, anywhere that's possible. If it's a good abbreviation, please use it. If you don't, we'll change it on our end, and we do when we're reviewing these when they're set up. But please help us help you, and do make those abbreviations if possible at the front end. This is your basic 52 screen, and this is what you're staring at before you enter a vendor. You notice that it has the vendor number, name control, all of that. So 52. If you're not, I'm hoping, used to seeing these screens. Adding a foreign vendor to RStars. Foreign vendors numbers are assigned on the 52 screen. Shocker there. And all foreign vendors start with a 2. That's how we know just by a quick glance that they are foreign vendors. Basically, the hierarchy of how we want you to create these numbers, vendor numbers, is if it's a 2 plus the 9-digit US issued ID, so 2, 9, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, the second is 2, and then the 9 numerical digits provided by foreign ID or government issued ID with no alpha characters. We do not want any alpha characters in the vendor number. It has to do with how it is found on the screen. And if you start throwing in alpha characters, it really skews the numbering sequence on the screen. So we've had problems with that in the past. So we just ask that you don't do it that way. And then 2, agency numbers. If you aren't provided a US issued ID, and on the W-8 form, they do not provide a numeric, a foreign issued government ID. We just had 2 vendors come in last week where the governments don't issue IDs to their businesses or citizens. I don't know how they track them, but they do not do it. So that is not an option. Then the third and last option to put a number is the 2, then the 3 numbers of your agency, and then 6 numbers, and then you want to use a normal sequence like 00001, 00002, something like that. Whatever's available, you can look on the screen, on the 52 screen, and it should help you. So that's how we ask you to create those vendor numbers. Then you're going to type the vendor name control, which is the first 4 letters of a vendor's name, or last name if it's an individual, but first business name is the first 4. Going to have a vendor type of 5, which stands for business. You're going to have, they're going to be 1099 reportable as a Y. It's always a Y. It'll stay a Y, although it does not impact their 1099 pickup because we have it, foreign vendors are automatically excluded from 1099 production. You're going to put in the FEI or Social Security number as O. This is not a 0. This is O for other. So it's not going to be an S. It's not going to be an F. It's going to be an O. And then the reason code add, that's typical. Ownership code is going to be R, and R is for foreign vendor. Then when you get down to the address, you want the city, province, postal code, because you're going to have your street and mailing address on the first line of the address. Then city, province, postal code, zip is going to be on the line below that. It's either going to be on line address line, the second line available or the third line available, depending on the address susses out. It's not going to go on that fourth line. That fourth line won't print on the checks. The city field is going to be the country. So if it's Botswana, if it's United Kingdoms, Ireland, Australia, city is the country. The country is the country. So it could be city, Ireland, country, Ireland. And then you want to fill in the state and zip code with all X's. So basically, this is what it's going to kind of look like once you add it to the 52 screen. If it is a U.S. government issued tax ID, you'll notice that the 298-1234567, 98-1234567 is the U.S. ID. 2 indicates that it's a foreign vendor. You'll notice that the 10 is populated with that 98-1234567 number. You'll notice that the city, you've got your address, mailing address above here, but the city and the province and the zip code is all on the line underneath that. You'll notice that Canada is in the city, XXX for state, XXXXXXX for the zip, and Canada again is for the country. And this is all going to be in our status once you're said and done. If the vendor is being added, this is an example of what it's like to add it when it's a foreign government issued ID. We've got, here's the vendor number is 2459122, and then you'll notice 3 zeros. You'll notice the TIN is 45912222000. Well, in this case, this vendor has a government issued ID starting with alpha characters. So we don't want alpha characters in this vendor number, nor do we want it in the TIN number. You'll notice that it was then put as 4599122, and then we filled it out with zeros because you want to maintain the no alpha, all numeric number. And the last one is one that's, okay, they didn't give you a U.S. issued ID. They did not give you a foreign vendor ID. They just handed it in and said, we're not providing anything that's useful to you to fill it out. So it is going to be 2. And then in this case, it's my agency that I take care of is 999, which is general fund. But you want to use yours. So if you're from DAS, if you're from corrections, if you're from OYA, you want to use your first 3 digits of your agency code, and then 000, and then this is the first one that 999 has ever put in, so it's obviously 1. 404, if anyone's here from 404 or 440, you put in a lot with agency numbers, so be very careful about the sequence number. It's you have several in there as great examples, actually. But and then the TIN number, of course, is 999, and then zeros, 1. And then we note that there's no FEIN foreign TIN provided. You know, nothing from us, no foreign TIN provided. So those are the 3 examples of how to enter a vendor number and vendor into the R-stars. Another thing I'd like to point out, I didn't point it out necessarily by highlighting it, but you'll notice that this one is London, which is the United Kingdoms, and United Kingdom. So there are times when is no province or or district or county or anything. It's just the city, and it is just the zip code. It is what it is. That's probably the one I get #1 questions on. Ooh, here's my first poll. So what is the preferred hierarchy for assigning foreign vendors a vendor number? Is it 2 plus the agency number and the sequence? 2, then the second is the 2 of the foreign government, and then the third with the U.S. government issued ID? #2, I'll let you read it. You guys can read. I'll let you answer it and submit your questions or submit your answers. I like #4, no hierarchy assigned a foreign vendor number. Just trying to get them in. Amber, I'll let you control this.
Do you just, when you're ready, if you'll give them which one is the right answer?
Oh,
and then we'll
okay. Well, the answer is #3. It's 2 plus the U.S. issued ID. We always prefer the U.S. ID if at all possible, if they have it. 2 is the foreign government ID, and 2 is the agency sequence number. And really the reason we like that U.S. Issued ID is those W-8s, if you use them annually, if you pay them annually, never go south on you. You would never have to re-request them. Any other one has to present a W-8 that goes bad every 3 years. So we like those with the U.S. government issued, especially if you're paying them annually. So you got it right. Woohoo! I love you people that answered no hierarchy of assigned. Okay. SFMS duties when it comes to foreign vendor setup. So you guys have done all the research. You've ascertained that they are indeed a foreign vendor. You've gotten that W-8. You've gotten it entered into R-stars. You then send that W-8 to me directly. We do not have a box for foreign vendors, and the box for that's the email box that's for vendor SFMS is strictly for Tammy's desk and for domestic vendors. We need a copy of the completed W-8 provided to the agency. Then we review all the W-8 forms for completeness and determine if it's appropriate. It is appropriate for the vendor to be, in fact, a foreign vendor. W-8 forms are returned with U.S. government issued tax identification numbers. We do an e-verify against those vendor numbers. So we do a TIN match, just like all the Social Security numbers and domestic vendors that are added to our stars every day. We assign effective end date is to remain blank. If it is a U.S. issued ID, and we update any fields that are improperly populated. So we do a bit of cleanup. We update the vendor number to 2 with a 9-digit U.S. government issued ID if it's incorrectly put in using the other two types of vendor numbers. We will delete other vendor numbers if it's not in the correct format. And we'll notify agencies of those changes to those vendor numbers so they're aware of it so they can use it correctly in the future. And then we change the profile from status of R to I, which is inactive.
And then Carlene, there was just one question in the chat. They
Okay.
just want to confirm one more time. Once they've entered, they send the W-8 directly to you, right? Not the
Yes,
normal email address for the vendor.
not the normal email address because Tammy doesn't do foreign vendors. I do foreign vendors, and we keep that clean for the quote unquote normal vendor desk stuff.
Thanks, Carlene. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, if the vendor does not have a U.S. tax ID or only a foreign government issued ID, we change the effective end date to 12/31 and then the year received +3. So anything that we've received this year has an effective end date of 12/31/2028. So we receive it in 25, 26, 27, 28. Yes, I used my fingers to count. Update any fields improperly populated again. We update the vendor number to 2 and a 9-digit foreign vendor issued if appropriate. We assume because you're taking this training, you're going to know that there are no alpha characters allowed and you're going to do the best you can within that 2 plus 9-digit foreign vendor ID. If appropriate, we may delete any vendor number if it's in another format. And we, again, will notify the agency of a change to the number if one is made, and change profile status from R to I. And foreign vendors, unlike regular domestic vendors, maintain an I status. They are only opened temporarily for a certain finite amount of time for payment. We'll talk about that a little later, but just so you know, they are maintained in an I status. So basically, after a foreign vendor is complete, what you're going to see is a vendor that I'm going to say, I use this vendor contact line to make notes regarding the W-8, which is the W-8 BENE was received with no FEIN or foreign TIN provided. And therefore, its effective change end date to 12/31/2028 in I status. If it had a U.S. issued, just as a reminder, if it had a U.S. issued ID that was confirmed, it is a 7, it's fine, it's a good to go ID, then the effective end date would be blank and would be put into I status. And it would be the vendor contact would say what document we received with EIN, and we'd also, so there you go. Any questions regarding why I use the vendor contact? So you may see if you put a vendor contact in there, if you had put Lucy Van Pelt here, I would overwrite this with my notes because there's no other place to put them. Okay. Now we're going to talk about vendor profiles without effective end dates. So, because that is a majority of what we have and what we maintain in our stars. So basically, all foreign vendor profiles remain in inactive status until the agency requests for activation. Due to various treaties and withholdings and reporting requirements, each of these activation for payment needs to be reviewed prior to activation for payment. That's one reason we do it. Vendors with W-8s with valid and verified U.S. IDs, if used for once a year, will not expire. So that's why we really love those U.S. IDs. And vendors must be paid annually to maintain this status. So there is that one little caveat for a US ID. So if you have a US ID, we verify it. They don't have a effective end date. We put them into I status. You use them in 2023, but you don't use them in 2024, but you use them in 2025. I look at that and say, oh, you skipped a year. That makes it the W-8 now have an expiration date. So sometimes we have to request a new W-8 after 3 years, even if they have a valid EIN, because we have to, IRS says we have to have them paid annually at the minimum to maintain this non-expiration status. If a vendor with a valid verified EIN skips the payment year, I skipped ahead, W-8s can be deemed expired if received more than 3 years ago in the past. Another appropriate W-8 will need to be completed and verified and received by SFMS before they can be activated. If less, then we will just add an effective end date on it, and we will go ahead and activate it, but it will be inactivated, and we will still need to ask for a new valid W-8 in the future. W-8s without a valid or verified EIN is only in effect for 3 years past the year received, and will have an effective deadline date in that line and on their profile. And once this date is reached, the vendor must submit a new appropriate W-8 before I can open and activate for payment. Okay, let's talk about the activation form. This form was put out about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago. And it's a relatively easy form, but it answers all the questions I need for vendor activation that are not questions that are needed on a domestic vendor. Because remember, once a domestic vendor is open and active on the system, they are open and active on the system. Foreign vendors maintain an inactive status until you say, yes, we're ready to pay this vendor. We need it open so we can make our transactions in RStars. What you're going to do is you're going to just tap on the request date and say, and a calendar pops up and you just click it. Agency number, you're going to have to type that first 3 digits in, so your gas, it's 107, OYA 415, state police 257. Who is requesting this? Because I need to know who I'm talking to, who's requesting this information. You're going to put in the vendor number, that 2 number that is so very important. Do they have another mail code? So that would be on the 51 screen. And we do have foreign vendors, remember, that maintain a U.S. office. So their foreign corporate office is going to be 000 because that's their parent office, and that's where we're going to send any 1042s to or IRS forms to. And then the 001 may be their office in the United States or a secondary office in whatever country. So it could be they want to receive all their correspondence on 001 or 000, but they have a remittance office different, and it's a 001. Then you're going to have just the vendor name. Who are you paying? So really easy. Tap and click form. Then this is where it gets down to the nitty gritty. We need to know, what did the vendor provide? Did they provide supplies? Is this a subscription that you're paying for? Or is this insurance premiums? Then you're going to click that within that little box. Or did they provide services? If they provided services, click that box. Description of what services or supplies were provided. I'm a curious little duck. I like to know why. What did we do? What did we do? Click in there and just type, what did they provide? They provided bug lures. I love that one. They provided uh, uh, speaking services. They did our provided uh, services where they provided employment uh, services of some sort, whether they are looking over new employment applications. So that kind of help your HR. If services were provided, then we are required to answer the following question. Did the representative physically come to the U.S., and that can be land, sea, or air, to provide these services? It's very important. Did they break the territorial U.S. boundaries to provide those services? 1 year forestry had a Liger study, and that's photography that is, I think it's infrared in nature, don't quote me, but they flew over the United States to take pictures for slide or forest fire uh, things. But as I know it from building outside of the U.S., outside of the U.S. government, state government, we used it for slide potential for building homes. So it's a Liger study, but this is a Canada firm. They flew over the U.S. air. They broke the air barrier of the territory of the U.S. to provide those services. Did they come in and do a sea study, a study of the floor of the sea off the coast of Oregon? Okay, there again, they're breaking that barrier of the territory of U.S. So we need to know land, sea, or air to provide services. If they provided supplies, you can stop at what supplies did they provide, and you don't need to go, oops, went further. You don't need to go any further. One of the nice things that this newer form provides me and you is the ability to, oh, they have an address change. They moved their offices. And you can fill this in and send me that information so that I can update the vendor. We didn't have that on the last form, but we do now. And then you just email me this form. And I want it in the Word doc form because down lower is this is a working document, and I have stuff that I need to fill out for my purposes and for the purposes of potentially creating an IRS issued document to this vendor, uh, to them. So please send this as a Word doc. Do not send as a PDF. If you send it as a PDF, I will reject it and send it back to you and say, please refill this form out as a Word doc. And I have had instances where people have tried to reconvert it back into the Word doc. That doesn't work. So just start again. It's an easy enough form. It shouldn't take you any time, but I'm sorry. I need it as a Word doc. Okay, requesting a foreign activation is the who, why, what, and where is essentially what I need. And actually what your agency needs is, so these questions need to be answered. Who does the agency want to pay? Why is the agency paying them? And did they provide services and supplies? What were the services or supplies? And please be descriptive. And if services, where did they provide these services? U.S. territory, land, sea, air, foreign, or can you tell me with some assurance that the foreign vendors never came to the U.S., that they provided these services outside of the U.S., they stayed home, they did it over online, they provided them online and just delivered the services. We have interpreters who do this via phone. We have them do it via internet, but they stay in the country of origin. That is a good answer. U.S. land, sea, and air gets a little trickier. Like U.S. vendors, SFMS is responsible for completing income information returns for foreign vendors. These are called a 1042-S. This is why land, sea, and air is not necessarily my favorite answer. Anyway, only foreign vendors that have physically crossed those borders into the U.S. are eligible to be reported to the IRS. And last year, the threshold dropped from 25 reported 1042s to 10. So we're getting more and more likely that we have to report these electronically to the IRS. I believe we had 8 last year. We're on track, I believe, to do 8 or 9 again this year. So we're getting dangerously close to 10, the magic number where we have to report these electronically to the IRS. All services performed within the U.S. are reportable to the IRS always. And supplies are not reportable to the IRS. So love it. And if a vendor is delivering supplies personally, so say you ordered something from Canada or Mexico and they chose to drive them here, then all mileage from the border is subject to reporting. And all of a sudden, as soon as they come over that U.S. border, if they're, uh, uh, it counts. They are now in the U.S. They have broken the land, sea, air barrier. Hope that makes uh, sense. Anyway, final thoughts on foreign vendor change request forms. The form is intended to be easily completed by the agency for activation and change requests. It's also intended to be easily answered, all of the where, when, why needs for the IRS compliance. And once the form is completed, the form must be sent in its original format, a Word doc, to my email address for review, activation, and also we keep them saved for backup purposes. If a form is returned in any other format, it will be returned to the agency earlier, and the vendor will not be activated in the system. This is a working form. It has information at the bottom that needs to be completed by SFMS, and ultimately this form is used as the backup document when we're verifying potential 1042 forms produced and sent by the state of Oregon, if applicable, to the foreign vendors and required reporting to the IRS. So these I tried to make them as easy as possible. As and as quickly filled out. I understand the agencies are very, very busy. You have a ton of work on your desk. You can't tell me you don't. And these are I'm just tried to make it as point and click as possible for you. So if you have any suggestions of minor changes that you would like to see, you can always let me know. I'm always looking for improvement. However, right now the form I'm hoping the form is useful for your agency. It is very useful for mine. Okay, SFMS requires a separate foreign vendor request form to be completed each time a vendor needs to be activated because it helps determine if income is eligible. Ah, that's a good question. I will do it as soon as the poll is done. We'll talk about that. And there's also one more thing I need to talk about. So, true or false? And the answer is we do require one for every time the vendor needs to be activated because remember, foreign vendors stay in inactive status. So the answer is true. We do require one for every time it's requested, unlike domesticated vendors that stay in open active status. Perfect. Yay. Okay. The question was, where do you find the form? Where you find the form is you say, I don't have this form. I need to activate a vendor. Send me the form. Because Amber, please note that last question. I didn't catch it fast enough. Contact me for the foreign vendor form because I will send it to you. We do not keep these forms online. You will not find a vendor change request form online. This was a conscious decision because we have had cases where outside the state of Oregon, people have requested changes or activations and I have a lot of experience with 1099s of vendors saying, yeah, I want you to change it from what you reported to me to 0 because I don't want it a 1099. Well, I'm sorry, that comes from the agency and you are not with the agency. So we require the agency staff fill these out, and to keep them offline, we will just send them to you directly. So if you don't have one, send me an email and I'll send one right back to you. Okay, what was that second
Okay,
question?
we have a couple questions.
Oh,
So,
good.
what if
I love
one
questions.
person, they're fun. What if one person handles the reactivations and other staff make the payments?
They have basically in the past, foreign vendors have only been open for 24 hours, but when Oregon buys came on on online, uh, we try to only keep them open from the point of my receiving that activation request form. They're open for 5 days. So we try to keep it only 5 days. Occasionally it slips to 8, but 5 days. So you need to be in communication with that person that pays and say, are you ready to pay? Because this is going to be open, and then she's going to go in and manually shut them down in 5 days. Business days. Business days. So if you ask me for it on a Friday, it'll be open till the next Friday. And there are I am trying manfully. I've thrown myself on the mercy. And I'm going to put my boss in on the line. Ergocentric. Everybody uses Ergocentric. Uh, it is the one I open and close absolutely the most. From what I can tell, they are only supplies, and I'm throwing myself on the mercy of my boss and asking for that one to join the 3 others that are permanently open so that you don't need to ask for activation. But for right now, unfortunately, every time you use them, you really do need to send me a activation request. But I'm trying to get him to see the light. But I've just asked it, so we'll give him time.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then the final question we have right now is just that they should only request a form when they need to fill one out, or can they just request a copy of it?
Oh, I please keep a copy of it. Share it with your internal friends. Don't share it with the external friends, but keep it amongst yourself. Whoever does this job, who's ever going to be requesting a foreign vendor, certainly should have a copy of this. But if it's you know every single time because you don't save it, then it's every single time and you don't save it. You just let me know and I'll send it to you. It's really just a matter of grabbing it and pasting it into the email. So, yes. So yeah, that's the part of foreign vendors. Okay, and the reason why they're so manual is coming up. The 1042. Any more questions before I move on to the really exciting IRS reporting? And those of you who do 1099s with me know that I get really excited about the IRS.
We are here for the IRS.
Yeah, we are here for the IRS. The one thing all of us
There's
agree, none of us want to be caught by the IRS.
no more questions. We can move on. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Foreign vendors and IRS reporting is We will send 1042S information returns. These are due to all eligible foreign vendors by the IRS by March 15th. SFMS responsibility is filing the 1042 information returns with the IRS and for mailing the information returns to the foreign vendors who are paid for services rendered within the U.S. border. Okay, 1042S information returns is an incredibly manual process. So all activation and request forms are reviewed prior to the 1042 processing. So for the full calendar year, we're saving up those forms and we're doing a final review, making sure that we've hit everybody that's been reported for services, everybody that has been reported for services within the U.S. And it's within the U.S. where they become eligible for that 1042. So U.S. to deliver goods or perform services are separated from those vendors that just performed services or supplies globally. Payments to the vendors are researched, confirmed, and then collated for the end of year IRS reporting. So this is not an automated process, it's manual. We've got a spreadsheet for that. We process filing information returns. The forms are mailed to the appropriate foreign vendor. We do a transmission, a summary form, and individual foreign vendor forms created to create packets for filing and are sent to the IRS. Like I said, right now, the minimum jump-off point for electronically transmitting is 10. That means we're allowed 9. But even if we had 10 and we needed to do this electronically, it would still be the same manual process to produce because these foreign vendors are not right now currently automated in any way, shape, or form. We activate, we inactivate, we do everything manually. SFMAS retains all the copies of all the forms sent into the IRS as well as all backup documentation, including non-eligible vendors, requests for a period of 4 years, and this is per IRS retainage requirements. This is outside and overwrites what it would be normally a SOS retainage. So here's a good visual of the difference between foreign vendor and U.S. vendors. The number of the form name is different. It's W-9s for regular vendors. It's a W-8 for a foreign vendor. The number of forms associated with that is there is one W-9 form. However, remember, there are 5 different types of W-8 forms. Who requests the forms? Well, right now, if you enter a vendor into RStars, if we don't already receive a W-9 from the agency once it's activated, we send one out, and it's an automated activation through the activation process. For the W-8, the agency needs to request these forms. Not automated at all. There's nothing in the system that says, oh, this is a foreign vendor, we need to send them a form. Mm-mm. We need to have it requested by the agency so they have it in hand to send to us to finish the process. Do the forms expire? For W-9, no, because it's a U.S. issued ID. For foreign vendors, yes, potentially it won't expire, but for most part it does expire because most of the forms that come in do not have a U.S. EIN. They have, so it's received plus 3 years without government issued ID. Profile status, always open in U.S. once it's been verified. Always inactive unless it's requested to be activated. Eligible for ACH payments. This is a fun one. U.S. vendors, no problem. Yes. Foreign vendors, no. It has been determined by SFMS that the requirements for ACH offering payments for foreign vendors is not in the cards. It's just too difficult. Uh, so you need to make it pay all payments through warrants or wire payments. IRS information returns. U.S. vendor is going to be a 1099 NEC or MISC, and the foreign vendors, as we just talked about, is going to be a 1042S. And then the IRS information filing process is completely automated. We have programming within our stars that helps us produce these reports, 1099 NEC and MISC, and there are reports for the agencies leading up to the IRS filings that you can go through and review. Foreign vendor is completely manual, completely held within SFMS. There is no review. You might get an email from me saying, are you sure your request was unclear if this in fact was, did they come to the US or did they not come to the US? Generally speaking, these are for vendors that we haven't seen before, and it's just a little dicey, and we're just confirming that in fact they came to the US. Okay, so ACH is not available for foreign vendors. I just mentioned that, but it was discovered on the back end that US vendor, or if it's discovered on the back end that a US vendor is in fact a foreign vendor, and they have vendor is currently receiving ACH payments, the banking information will be removed and from their profile, and the vendor will then be coded to receive a warrant. The vendor will also receive a letter saying, "Up, we discovered that you're actually a foreign vendor. We're not allowed to say to send ACH payments to foreign vendors, be they in the U.S. or not. Sorry, we don't know where you're going to send that money on the back end of it, and uh, we don't want to be on the hook or in trouble. So the reporting requirements are such that we don't want to take that onto our shoulders. So no, you're being inactivated. Um, Please reach out to the agency if you want to receive your payments as a wire. And then foreign vendor payment timelines are, oh, like I say, I've said this like 16 times, you're going to be really sick of me, I'm sure, are always inactivated and until activation request has been received. And they are active for 5 days, 5 business days, once you have been notified that the vendor is active and ready for use. So do not delay payment processing once you receive that activation, because 5 days goes by really, really fast. Oh, goodness gracious. Uh, so, uh, so do not delay that payment processing. If you have that secondary person, please work with them so that they know that they have to have a quick turnaround, that once it's open, it's very, very, it's still kind of tight. If you do need to extend that time period, you can always let me know, please extend this to such and such a time, and we will try to accommodate that. But it's got to be within reason, like 7 days, 7 business days. Or if you find that they didn't do it fast enough, just give me a heads up, and I will let it hang a little longer. Okay. So SFMS, main contact for foreign vendors is me. My phone number is 971-900-9769. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, I have been known to walk people through uh, getting them on the 52 screen if you feel that that is necessary. Uh, I don't mind a little hand holding. That's why I'm here. My email address is, you can see, and uh, oh, Teams, click here. I don't know that one. All foreign vendor change requests are to be sent directly to my email address. Do not send a vendor desk email. Do not send it to the vendor desk email. And do not send me a vendor change request form. It needs to say foreign vendor change requests. Anything that says vendor change request forms are not accepted for activating a foreign vendor. They don't have the questions I need answered to determine IRS reporting. And these forms are for domestic vendors only and they are part of the automated reporting process. They do not satisfy those questions needed for activation. Please contact me directly if your agency needs a foreign vendor change request or any questions concerning or regarding a foreign vendor. This form is not found or published on the SFMS website, so that's why you couldn't find it earlier if you went there. I think I should have, I should have one last. After this training, do you feel more confident that you can enter a foreign vendor on the 52 screen or request a foreign vendor activation? I'll give you time. Amber, did you catch that question?
Go back and find it.
I'm hoping the answer is yes, but this is it's just a yes, no, and it's up to you how you feel.
While we're giving them time to respond, do you want me to read the question to you, Carlene? We can
Yes,
leave
please.
it open for a little bit. She's replying to slide 27. She said I've seen a U.S. vendor W-9 go inactive after a year. I thought I had to obtain or submit a copy of their W-9 to reactivate if not paid in over a year.
Now, if it's a W-9, those are TAMI. And if you submitted a I'll kind of sort of answer this, but really this needs to be asked of the vendor desk itself, if this is a W-9. But my experience with vendors that have been sent are put into the system. Let me go back to the really quick. I'm gonna close your eyes. Let me go back. Okay. So, if you'll notice down here, we have a W-9 request date. That's going to be the date that if we did not receive and code the vendor type in, you're going to enter a regular vendor as a vendor 8 type. If this has anything other than an 8, it will not send out a W-9, or it will send out a W-9 if it's and automated through the system. And if they don't receive it, then the vendor type will turn to a 9 and become inactive after after a certain number of days. I believe it's 30. But talk to Tammy about it. Like I said, regular vendors are not necessarily my forte. I'm going to get better at them. I've always promised myself I will get better at them, but right now I am a little bit shy on exact knowledge. There it again, she's probably going to have that in her presentation, whereas I don't cover that at all because W-8s are not an automated system, an automated thing for foreign vendors. And so there you go. Amber, I did not see results of the final question.
Just 1 second.
So anyway, but yeah, it's definitely a W-9 question is a TAMI question or a vendor desk question. Sorry, I can't answer that so completely for you. And any other questions? I'm just hoping they all understood and feel more confident about entering a vendor.
Like we had 36 responses, Carlene, and 100% said that they were more confident. That's
Oh,
awesome.
good. But like I said, if you need help, if you need assistance ever in entering these things, or you get a W-8 that is absolutely confusing, because I got one of those the other day, I don't mind helping on and researching it and giving you my best guess on how to resolve that issue. So, yeah. So that's it for me. If you have any more questions and want to stay behind and answer, I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope I've taken some of the mystique and kind of scariness of this out. That is my goal in these trainings. And
I just
y'all are
wanted to
welcome. Thank you for attending today.